I stood in that courtroom watching my pregnant sister Emma touch her belly while sitting next to my husband Mark. My parents sat behind Emma, glaring at me with contempt. The judge asked if I agreed to the proposed settlement. Paying child support for my sister's baby, my husband's child, while giving up my house to them. I gripped a manila folder containing documents that would change everything. 3 months ago, I thought my life was perfect, until I came home early from a canceled business trip. 3 months earlier, my life looked like everything I had worked so hard to build. At 32, I was a successful marketing director at a Fortune 500 company in Denver, pulling in 6 figures and proud of every promotion I had earned through late nights and strategic thinking. Mark and I had been married for 7 years, and we lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Cherry Creek that I had put the down payment on 5 years ago. The house was my pride and joy, with its wraparound porch and the garden I tended every weekend. Mark had lost his job as a software developer about a year ago when his company downsized. I told him to take his time finding the right position, that my salary could support us both while he figured out his next move. He seemed grateful at first, cooking dinner most nights and keeping the house immaculate. I thought we were a team weathering a temporary storm together. Then there was Emma, my 28-year-old sister. She had shown up at our doorstep 6 months ago with 2 suitcases and tears streaming down her face. Her latest boyfriend had kicked her out, she said, after she caught him cheating. This was Emma's pattern since high school. She would date these men who treated her poorly, ignore every red flag, then need rescuing when it inevitably fell apart. She had never held a job for more than 3 months, always finding some reason why the boss was unfair or the work was beneath her. My parents had called me before she arrived, practically begging me to take her in. "Just temporarily, Lacey," my mother Margaret had said. "You have that big house, and family helps family. You know Emma's had such a difficult life." That difficult life was entirely of Emma's own making, but I could never say that to my parents. Emma had been their golden child since birth, the pretty one, the delicate one who needed protecting. I was the responsible older daughter who was expected to have everything together and help everyone else. So I let Emma move into our guest room. I even helped her update her resume and set up job interviews, though she always found excuses to miss them. Headaches, anxiety, not feeling ready. Mark started defending her, saying I was being too harsh, that she needed time to heal. They began spending time together while I was at work. He was teaching her coding, he said, helping her develop marketable skills. That day in late September, everything changed. My business trip to Chicago had been canceled at the last minute due to the client having a family emergency. I texted Mark that I was coming home early, but he didn't respond, which wasn't unusual. He often left his phone in another room while working on his computer. I pulled into our driveway at 2 in the afternoon, noticing Emma's beat-up Honda Civic parked at an odd angle, like she had been in a hurry. The house was quiet when I entered. Mark's laptop was open on the kitchen counter, showing lines of code, but he wasn't there. I grabbed a glass of water, thinking maybe they had gone for a walk, when I heard it. A sound from upstairs. From our bedroom. My brain tried to rationalize it as I climbed the stairs. Maybe Mark was moving furniture, maybe Emma was helping him with something. But as I approached our bedroom door, which was slightly ajar, the sounds became unmistakable. I pushed open the door, and time seemed to stop. There was my husband of 7 years in our bed with my sister. The bed where we had planned our future, talked about having children someday when things were more stable. Emma was on top of him, her long blonde hair cascading down her back, and when she heard the door open, she turned to look at me. She did not scramble for covers. She did not gasp in shock. She looked me directly in the eye with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was confidence. It was triumph. "Lacey," she said calmly, still not moving. "You're home early." Mark finally seemed to register what was happening and tried to sit up, pushing Emma off him. "Lacey, this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I heard myself say, my voice surprisingly steady, "because it looks like you're having sex with my sister in our bed." Emma laughed. She actually laughed as she finally reached for Mark's shirt to cover herself. "Oh, come on, Lacey. Don't be so dramatic. You had to know this was coming." "What are you talking about?" She stood up, wrapping the sheet around herself like a toga, and walked toward me. I stepped back instinctively. Mark's been miserable for months. You emasculated him, making him feel like less of a man because you were the breadwinner. He needed someone who could make him feel strong again. Someone who appreciated him. You've been living in my house, I said, my voice starting to shake. Eating my food. I was trying to help you. I have something to tell you, Emma said, and her hand went to her stomach in a gesture I recognized with horrible clarity. I'm pregnant. 10 weeks along. The room spun. 10 weeks. She had been living with us for 6 months, which meant this had been going on for over 2 months. In my house. In my bed. We're in love, Mark finally spoke, pulling on his boxers and standing beside Emma. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, but Emma and I have a connection. You're always at work, always focused on your career. You scheduled our intimate time, for God's sake. Everything with you was about control and planning. And Emma understands me, he continued. She sees me as a man, not as some project to manage or a disappointment to fix. I looked between them. These two people I had trusted most in my world. How long? I managed to ask. How long has this been going on? Emma smiled that triumphant smile again. Since my 2nd week here. Mark was so lonely, so sad. One night you were working late again, and we started talking. Really talking. One thing led to another. In my house, I said. You've been sleeping with my husband in my house for months. It's our house, Mark corrected. My name is on the deed, too, because I added you after we got married. I paid the down payment. I pay the mortgage. See? Mark turned to Emma. This is what I mean. Everything is about money and control with her. Emma nodded sympathetically and then dropped the biggest bombshell. Mom and Dad already know, she said casually. We told them 2 weeks ago. They understand. They said true love matters more than convention. They're happy for us. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. My parents knew. They knew my sister was sleeping with my husband, carrying his child, and they had not told me. They had not warned me. They had let me continue living this lie. I do not remember driving to my parents' house in Colorado Springs. Somehow, I ended up in their driveway as the sun was setting, my hands shaking as I turned off the engine. I had not called ahead. Part of me hoped Emma had been lying about them, knowing that this betrayal had not spread that far. The front door was unlocked, as it always was during dinner time. I could smell my mother's pot roast cooking, the same recipe she had made every Sunday since I was a child. The normalcy of it made my stomach turn. I heard voices from the dining room and walked toward them on unsteady legs. There were my parents, Robert and Margaret, sitting at their usual spots at the mahogany dining table. And there, in what had been my spot growing up, were several cardboard boxes. I recognized Emma's handwriting on them. Bedroom stuff, bathroom items, books. My mother looked up as I entered, and there was no surprise on her face. Just a slight frown, as if I were interrupting something important. Lacey, she said, setting down her fork. We weren't expecting you tonight. You knew, I said. It was not a question. My father cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses, the way he always did when he was about to deliver what he considered wisdom. Sit down, sweetheart. Let's discuss this like adults. Adults? I laughed, but it came out harsh and broken. Adults don't sleep with their sister's husband. Now, Lacey, my mother said, her tone shifting to the lecturing voice she had used when I was a teenager. You need to understand that Emma has had a very difficult life. She's never had the advantages you've had. What advantages? I worked for everything I have. You've always been the strong one, my father said. Things come easily to you. School, career, managing money. Emma struggles with those things. She's more sensitive, more emotional. So that makes it okay for her to sleep with my husband? My mother stood up and walked over to me, trying to take my hands. I pulled away. Lacey, we've been worried about you for years. You're so focused on your career, so controlling. You've emasculated that poor man. Is it any wonder he found comfort with someone who makes him feel needed? Poor man? He's been unemployed for a year, living off my salary. Because you made him feel like he couldn't measure up, my father interjected. Emma tells us you constantly reminded him about money, made him feel small. A man needs to feel like a provider, Lacey. You took that away from him. I stared at them, these people who had raised me. She's been having an affair with my husband for months. She's pregnant with his child. And you're defending her? We're not taking sides, my mother said, though she clearly was. We just think you should be happy for them. Emma's never been in love before, not really. And now she's going to have a baby. You're going to be an aunt. Isn't that wonderful? They want my house, I said flatly. The house I paid for. Well, they'll need it for the baby, my father said, as if this were the most reasonable thing in the world. You make good money. You can get an apartment. Emma and Mark will need the space, and they can't afford something on their own right now. Right now, Mark hasn't worked in a year, and Emma's never held a job. When exactly do you think they'll be able to afford something? My mother's face hardened. This is exactly what we mean, Lacey. Everything with you is about money, and being better than everyone else. Family helps family. You should want to help your sister, and your future niece or nephew. My future what? That's my husband's baby with my sister. Ex-husband? My father corrected. Emma says Mark will be filing for divorce this week. They had it all planned out. Everyone had been planning this behind my back. I felt like I was drowning in my childhood dining room, surrounded by family photos that now seemed like lies. There I was at 8, holding baby Emma, promising to always protect her. There we were at Emma's high school graduation that she barely managed to complete, my parents beaming with pride while I had graduated summa cum laude, and they had barely acknowledged it. We've talked to Thomas, my mother continued. Thomas Brennan, their lawyer friend who had done their wills. He says these situations can be handled amicably if everyone cooperates. Since Mark has been unemployed and Emma has no income, you'll likely need to pay some support. It's only fair, considering your salary. Fair? I could not believe what I was hearing. They betrayed me, and I should pay them? Don't be dramatic, my father said. No one betrayed anyone. 2 people fell in love. It's unfortunate that it happened this way, but Emma's pregnant now, and the baby is what matters. You should want to help. After all, family helps family. There was that phrase again. Family helps family. It had been the motto my entire life, except it only seemed to flow in one direction. When I had needed help paying for college, I had taken out loans. When Emma needed help, my parents paid for everything. When I had been passed over for a promotion and cried in my apartment alone, no one checked on me. When Emma had a bad day, the entire family rallied around her. My mother reached into a folder on the sideboard and pulled out a document. Thomas helped us draft this. It's just a simple agreement, laying out how we can all move forward as a family. You keep your job and apartment, Mark and Emma get the house, and you help with expenses for the baby. Everyone wins. I took the paper with numb fingers and read through it. It was worse than I had imagined. Not only was I supposed to give up my house, but I was also supposed to pay $5,000 a month in support for the baby and Emma, since she would need to stay home to care for the child. There was even a clause about maintaining family harmony by not discussing the circumstances of the relationship change with extended family or friends. You want me to pay them to live in my house and keep quiet about what they did? We want you to be mature about this, my father said sternly. Think about how this would look to everyone if it got out. The scandal would be embarrassing for all of us. This way, we can tell people you and Mark simply grew apart, and Emma and Mark found love afterward. The baby was conceived after your separation. Clean and simple. But that's a lie. It's protecting the family reputation, my mother corrected, and protecting Emma and the baby from judgment. Surely you don't want your niece or nephew growing up with that stigma? I set the paper down on the table, my hands surprisingly steady. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Except for one thing. What about me? What about what they did to me? My mother sighed as if I were being terribly difficult. Lacey, you're strong. You've always been strong. You'll bounce back from this like you always do. Emma needs our support right now. She's fragile, and with the pregnancy hormones, we need to be careful not to upset her. Stress isn't good for the baby. When I was 25, I said quietly, I had a miscarriage. I was only 8 weeks along, but I called you Mom. Do you remember what you said? My mother shifted uncomfortably. That was different. You said it was probably for the best since I wasn't married yet and should focus on my career. You never once came to see me. You never asked how I was doing. You weren't with the right person, my father said. It wasn't meant to be. But Emma stealing my husband is meant to be? No one stole anyone, my mother said sharply. Mark made his choice. And, honestly, Lacey, maybe you should look at your own behavior. Why would he turn to Emma if you were being a good wife? That was when I knew. They would never take my side. They would never see me as the wronged party. In their eyes, I would always be the strong one who did not need help, while Emma would always be the delicate flower who needed protecting even when she was destroying my life. I need to go, I said, standing up. Take the agreement with you, my father called after me. Think about it rationally. Thomas says if this goes to court, it could get ugly. You don't want that. As I walked to the door, I heard my mother say to my father, She'll come around. She always does the right thing eventually. The right thing. Apparently, the right thing was to roll over and let them take everything from me while paying for the privilege. I sat in my car in their driveway, looking at the house where I had grown up, where I had always felt like I was never quite enough, despite all my achievements. Emma's boxes were being moved into my childhood room, ready for her to take that space too. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Emma told me you went to your parents. I hope you can be reasonable about this. We never meant to hurt you, but the heart wants what it wants. The baby deserves a stable home. Another text, this one from Emma. Mom says you took the agreement. Thanks for being understanding, sis. I knew you'd do the right thing for the baby. They all thought they had won. They thought I would crumble, that I would accept this treatment because I always had before. But sitting in that car, something shifted inside me. For the first time in my life, I was not going to be the good daughter, the responsible sister, the understanding wife. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I sat in the office of Catherine Bradley, one of Denver's toughest divorce attorneys. My friend from college, Jennifer, had recommended her after I called her at midnight, sobbing. Catherine was in her 50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her office walls were covered with legal degrees and awards, and she had a reputation for taking no prisoners in divorce proceedings. Let me understand this correctly, Catherine said, reviewing the notes she had been taking. Your husband has been having an affair with your sister for 2.5 months, she's pregnant, your parents knew about it for weeks, and now they all expect you to give them your house and pay support? That's the simplified version, yes. Catherine leaned back in her chair. In my 30 years of practice, I've seen some audacious behavior, but this might take the cake. First things first, we need to check your finances. Is everything joint? Most of it, I admitted. I added Mark to all my accounts after we got married. I thought that's what you were supposed to do. We spent the next 2 hours going through bank statements on Catherine's computer, and what we found made my blood run cold. For the past 4 months, Mark had been making transfers from our joint savings account to another account. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $700 there. But in the last month, he had moved $20,000. This account, Catherine pointed at the screen, is not in your name. Can you see? It's Mark and Emma's joint account. He opened an account with my sister? 6 weeks ago, according to these records. He's been systematically draining your joint assets and moving them to an account you can't access. I thought I could not feel any more betrayed, but apparently I was wrong. That's illegal, isn't it? It's marital asset dissipation. He's deliberately reducing the marital estate before filing for divorce. We can fight this, but Lacey, I need to be honest with you. Colorado is an equitable distribution state. The court will look at various factors, including length of marriage, each party's economic circumstances, and contributions to the marriage. I've paid for everything for the past year. Which actually could work against you, Catherine said gently. The court might see that as establishing a precedent of support. If Mark claims he gave up career opportunities to support your career, he could argue for maintenance. Before I could process this, my phone started buzzing. 17 missed calls from my parents. 43 text messages from various family members. I scrolled through them with growing horror. Aunt Patricia, Lacey, your mother told me about the situation. You need to step up and help Emma. She's pregnant. Cousin Michael, can't believe you're being so selfish about a house when there's a baby involved. Uncle James, your parents are heartbroken. Family supports family. Do the right thing. They're turning everyone against me, I said, showing Catherine my phone. Document everything, she advised. Every text, every call, every email, we'll need it. That evening, I discovered my parents had gone even further. My grandmother, my father's mother, who had always been my safe haven, called me crying. Lacey, dear, your parents just left. They told me everything. How you've been having affairs at work, how you've been emotionally abusing poor Mark, how you're trying to make Emma homeless while she's pregnant. Grandma, none of that is true. Emma's been sleeping with Mark. The baby is his. There was a long pause. That's not what they told me. They said you're making up terrible lies because you're jealous of Emma finding love. Lacey, I don't know what to believe anymore. Grandma, you know me. Have I ever lied to you? No, she said slowly. No, you haven't. But your mother was so convincing. She even showed me papers saying you've been mentally unstable, that you've been seeing a psychiatrist for paranoid delusions. What? I've never seen a psychiatrist in my life. Oh, Lacey, what is happening to our family? After I hung up with my grandmother, I realized the scope of what I was facing. This was not just a divorce. This was a coordinated attack on my character, my reputation, and my sanity. 3 days later, it got worse. Catherine called me to her office urgently. You need to see this, she said, handing me a stack of legal documents. The first was Mark's divorce filing. He was claiming emotional abuse, financial abuse, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He wanted alimony, the house, and damages for the psychological torture he had endured. The filing painted me as a controlling, manipulative wife who had systematically destroyed his self-esteem and prevented him from working. The second document was even worse. Emma was suing me separately for intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming I had created a hostile living environment, had threatened her safety, and had tried to separate true loves. She was asking for $50,000 in damages plus monthly support for her and the baby. This is insane, I said. I never threatened anyone. I haven't even spoken to them since I found them in bed. It gets worse, Catherine said, handing me a third document. My parents had filed their own claim. They were demanding repayment of $50,000 they claimed to have loaned me for college and graduate school. Attached were documents showing transfers from their account to mine from 10 years ago. But those were gifts, I protested. They paid for Emma's college too. They never asked her to repay anything. Look closer at the documents, Catherine said. I examined them carefully and noticed something odd. The dates were right, but the memo lines had been altered. What had originally said, "Gift for our brilliant daughter," now read, "Loan for education expenses." These are forged, I breathed. Can you prove it? I might still have the original bank statements somewhere. Find them. But Lacey, there's one more thing. Catherine handed me a final document. Your parents have signed affidavits supporting both Mark and Emma's claims. They're testifying that you've been unstable, abusive, and controlling. They've even included a psychological evaluation. I read through the evaluation, allegedly from a Dr. Harrison in Colorado Springs. It claimed I had been his patient for 2 years, diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and paranoid delusions. The signature looked official. I've never heard of this doctor, I said. I did some checking, Catherine said. Dr. Harrison exists, but he retired 3 years ago. His license is inactive. Someone used his name and old credentials to create this fake evaluation. Mark, I said suddenly. He's good with computers. He could have created these documents. Possibly, but proving it will be difficult. Lacey, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Is there anything in your past they could use against you? Any mental health treatment? Any incidents at work? Anything? No, I said firmly. I've never had any issues. My performance reviews at work are excellent. I've never been in trouble with the law. I don't even have a speeding ticket. Catherine nodded. Good. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to file a counter motion freezing all assets. Second, we're going to demand full financial disclosure from Mark. Third, we're going to subpoena phone records to establish the timeline of the affair. And fourth, you're going to need to find allies. Anyone who can testify to your character and to what they've observed about Mark and Emma. My grandmother might help once she knows the truth. Good. Anyone else? I thought about it. Maybe my friend Jason. He's a private investigator now, but we went to college together. He knows me well. Call him. We need all the help we can get. As I left Catherine's office, my phone rang. It was Mark. Lacey. This doesn't have to be ugly, he said, his voice calm and reasonable, the voice that had once made me feel safe. Just sign the agreement your parents drafted. Give us the house, help with the baby, and we can all move on. You stole $20,000 from our accounts, I said. I took what I was entitled to. Half of everything is mine, remember? Actually, given that I sacrificed my career for yours, I'm probably entitled to more. You didn't sacrifice anything. You got fired for showing up drunk to work. There was a pause. No one will believe that. I've been sober for years. Everyone knows that. You're the one who's been acting erratically. Your own parents are worried about your mental state because you've been feeding them lies. Lacey, his voice turned cold, you're going to lose. Emma and I have your parents' support, family support, and soon we'll have the court support. You're all alone. Just give up gracefully. Never, I said and hung up. That night, alone in a hotel room because I could not stand to be in the house, I cried until I had no tears left. They had planned this so carefully, painted me as the villain in my own story. But through the pain, a determination grew. They might have fired the first shot, but I was not going down without a fight. 2 weeks into the legal battle, I was living in a small furnished apartment in downtown Denver, most of my belongings still in the house I could not bear to enter. Jason Chen, my private investigator friend from college, had agreed to help me despite my parents' warnings to extended family and friends not to take sides. This is seriously messed up, Lacey, Jason said, sitting across from me at a coffee shop, reviewing everything I had told him. Your sister and your husband and your parents are supporting them? I know how it sounds, I said, exhausted from repeating the story. No, I believe you. I remember Emma from your college graduation. Even then, she had this way of making everything about her, remember? She wore white to your graduation dinner, and then cried when someone mentioned it, making you comfort her at your own celebration. I had forgotten about that, but Jason was right. It was a pattern I had been blind to for years. Listen, Jason continued, I've been doing this job for 8 years now. People who pull cons like this usually have a history. Has Emma done anything like this before? Not that I know of, but she lived in Austin for a couple of years before moving back to Colorado. She doesn't talk about that time much, just said it didn't work out. Give me a few days, Jason said. I'll do some digging. While Jason investigated, I met with my grandmother at her assisted living facility. At 91, Eleanor Williams was sharp as a tack and had always seen through family drama with laser precision. I knew something wasn't right with your mother's story, Grandma Eleanor said, patting my hand. You've never lied to me, not even when you were little and broke my favorite vase. Grandma, there's something I need to ask you about Emma. She sighed deeply. You want to know about Emma's real father, don't you? I nearly dropped my teacup. What? Oh, sweetheart. I thought you knew. Your mother had an affair when you were 4 years old. Robert isn't Emma's biological father. Her real father was a man named Daniel Torres, your mother's boss at the time. When she got pregnant, Daniel wanted nothing to do with it. He was married with 3 kids of his own. My world tilted. Dad knows? He found out when Emma was 2. Your mother confessed during a fight, but Robert, bless him, decided to stay and raise Emma as his own. The problem is, he's overcompensated ever since. The guilt of knowing she might sense he's not her real father has made him give her everything, excuse everything. And Mom? Your mother has held this over him for 24 years. Every time he tries to discipline Emma or tell her no, Margaret reminds him that he's not her real father, that Emma needs extra love and understanding. It's manipulation, pure and simple. This explains so much. The favoritism, the double standards, the way my father always seemed to shrink when Emma cried. 3 days later, Jason called me with urgency in his voice. Lacey, you need to come to my office right now. Bring Catherine. An hour later, Catherine and I sat in Jason's small downtown office as he spread documents across his desk. Emma Elizabeth Watson, he began, pointing to a report. That's the name she used in Austin. She was there from 2018 to 2021, and boy, did she leave a trail. He showed us a police report from Austin. She was living with a woman named Christina Marsh and Christina's fiancé, Brian Cooper. Sound familiar? Christina came home early from a business trip and found Emma in bed with Brian. But here's where it gets interesting. Jason pulled up a Facebook post from Christina from 3 years ago. Warning to all women in Austin. Emma Watson is a predator who targets taken men. She lived in my home, pretended to be my friend, then claimed she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby to extort money from us. When we demanded a paternity test, she disappeared. The pregnancy was fake. She's done this before, Catherine breathed. It gets better, Jason said. Or worse, depending on how you look at it. I tracked down Christina Marsh. She's willing to testify. She has recordings of Emma admitting the pregnancy was fake, that it was all about getting money to start over somewhere else. She even kept the fake ultrasound Emma used. This is huge, Catherine said, already taking notes. This establishes a pattern of behavior. Wait, there's more, Jason said. I did some digging into Mark's recent activities. You mentioned he's good with computers? Well, he's been very busy online. Jason showed us screenshots from various dating sites, but they were not typical profiles. They were elaborate fake personas targeting wealthy older men. Mark and Emma have been running a catfishing scheme together. They have 12 active profiles across different sites, primarily targeting widowed or divorced men over 60 with significant assets. How did you find this? Mark made a mistake. He used the same laptop for everything, and he connected to public Wi-Fi at a coffee shop. My tech guy was able to trace the activity back to him. They've been doing this for 3 months, right around the time Emma announced her pregnancy. They're grifters, I said, the pieces falling into place. Here's the biggest discovery, Jason said, pulling up bank records. They have over $200,000 in cryptocurrency acquired through these scams. The wallet addresses trace back to transfers from their victims. Catherine was furiously taking notes. This is criminal fraud. We need to contact the FBI. There's one more thing, Jason said hesitantly. The pregnancy. Emma is definitely pregnant. I confirmed that with a source at her OB's office. But Lacey, I don't think Mark is the father. What? Jason pulled up another document. 3 months ago, Emma was in Aspen for a weekend. She posted about it on an old Instagram account she thought she deleted. She was there with a man named Tom Harrison. He's 58, married, worth about $40 million. He's also running for state senate. He showed us photos from a hotel security camera Jason's contact had provided. Emma and Tom Harrison entering a hotel room together. 2 weeks later, she started the affair with Mark. The timeline suggests she was already pregnant when she seduced him. She needed someone to claim paternity, Catherine said. Someone who wouldn't question it, who would be thrilled to be a father. Or someone she could control, I added, thinking of how Mark had always wanted children, and I had asked to wait until we were more financially stable. I reached out to Tom Harrison's wife, Patricia, Jason continued. She's actually the district attorney for Pitkin County. When I showed her the evidence, she was very interested. Turns out, Emma has been blackmailing Tom for the past month, threatening to expose the affair and claim he forced himself on her unless he pays her $50,000. This is... I couldn't find words. A criminal enterprise, Catherine finished. Emma and Mark aren't just cheaters. They're con artists running multiple schemes, and your parents are either complicit or the most naive people on the planet. What about the forged documents my parents submitted? I asked. Jason smiled grimly. Remember that Dr. Harrison whose signature was on your fake psychological evaluation? I found him. He's been retired for 3 years, living in Florida. He's willing to sign an affidavit stating he never treated you and that signature is forged. He's actually angry someone used his name and is considering pressing charges himself. One more thing, Jason said, pulling up financial records. Your parents' supposed loan to you for college? I found the original transaction records from their bank. The memo line clearly states, "Gift for Lacey's education, so proud." They definitely altered those documents. But why would they do this? I asked, though I suspected I knew. Jason pulled up more financial records. Your grandmother Eleanor has a trust fund worth about $2 million. Your parents are the trustees. Over the past 5 years, they've withdrawn about $300,000, supposedly for her care. But her assisted living facility costs are only $60,000 a year, and she pays that herself from her pension. They're stealing from Grandma, I gasped. They've been using Emma as the excuse. Look at these withdrawals. Emma's medical expenses. Emma's therapy. Emergency funds for Emma. But Emma hasn't been to a doctor regularly, has never been in consistent therapy. The money just goes to your parents' accounts and then disappears. Catherine stood up, pacing now. This is massive fraud. Elder financial abuse, document forgery, theft. Your parents aren't just playing favorites, Lacey. They're criminals using Emma as cover for their embezzlement. We need to tell Grandma, I said. She already suspects, Jason said. She asked me to look into it months ago, but didn't want to cause family drama. She's been documenting things on her own. I sat back, overwhelmed. My family wasn't just dysfunctional. They were criminals. Emma and Mark were running cons. My parents were stealing from my grandmother, and they had all conspired to make me the villain to cover their crimes. So, what do we do now? I asked. Catherine smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. We gather every piece of evidence. We contact the FBI about the fraud. We contact the district attorney about the elder abuse. And then we walk into that courtroom and blow their entire conspiracy wide open. They'll go to jail, I said quietly. Yes, Catherine confirmed. They probably will. I thought I would feel conflicted about that, but all I felt was relief. They had chosen to cross every line, to destroy me to cover their crimes. Now they would face the consequences. There's a hearing next week, Catherine said. Preliminary motions about the temporary support order they're requesting. They think they have you cornered. They have no idea what's coming. The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I dressed in my most professional black suit. Catherine had coached me extensively on courtroom demeanor, but nothing could have prepared me for walking into that room and seeing them all there, assembled like they owned the place. Emma sat at the plaintiff's table, her hand resting prominently on her now visible baby bump, wearing a soft pink maternity dress that made her look innocent and vulnerable. Mark sat beside her in the only suit I had ever bought him, his hand covering hers protectively. Behind them, my parents sat in the first row, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief, while my father sat stone-faced, the picture of a disappointed patriarch. They had brought reinforcements. I saw my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, who gave me a look of pure disgust. Several cousins were there, all sitting on their side of the courtroom. The message was clear. The family had chosen, and I was the outsider. Only 2 people sat on my side. My grandmother Eleanor, who had insisted on coming despite my protests that it might be too stressful, and Jason, who had worn his best suit and looked ready for war. Their lawyer, a man named Richard Stockton, who looked like he had stepped out of a country club, stood up as we entered and gave Catherine a condescending smile. Miss Bradley, he said with false courtesy, I hope we can resolve this quickly. No need to waste the court's time with dramatics. Catherine did not respond, just set her briefcase down with practiced precision. Judge Martha Hendricks entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. This is a preliminary hearing regarding temporary support orders in the matter of Winters versus Winters, with additional claims by Emma Watson and Robert and Margaret Watson. Mr. Stockton, you may proceed. Stockton stood, buttoning his jacket with theatrical flair. Your Honor, We're here because Lacey Winters has abandoned her family obligations in the cruelest possible way. Her husband, Mark Winters, has been unemployed for a year due to the hostile environment she created at home. Her sister, Emma Watson, is pregnant and homeless because Miss Winters has refused to allow her to stay in the family home despite having 4 bedrooms. Objection, Catherine said calmly. Mr. Stockton is mischaracterizing the facts. Save it for your turn, Miss Bradley, the judge said. Continue, Mr. Stockton. As I was saying, Your Honor, Miss Winters makes over $200,000 a year, while Mr. Winters has no income. She has systematically emotionally abused him, making him feel worthless and emasculated. My client has fallen into severe depression as a result of this treatment. Mark managed to look appropriately sad and broken, though I had seen him laughing with Emma in the parking lot 15 minutes earlier. Furthermore, Stockton continued, Miss Watson is 8 months pregnant with Mr. Winters' child, conceived during a time when Miss Winters had essentially abandoned the marriage by working 80-hour weeks and treating her home like a hotel. Miss Watson and Mr. Winters found comfort in each other during a difficult time, and while the circumstances are unfortunate, love cannot be controlled. Several people in the gallery actually nodded sympathetically. I wanted to scream. The parents, Robert and Margaret Watson, are here to testify about their daughter Lacey's long history of controlling behavior and her concerning mental state. They're requesting repayment of educational loans they provided, which Miss Winters has refused to acknowledge. Stockton went on for another 20 minutes, painting a picture of me as a cold, calculating woman who had driven her husband into the arms of another through my neglect and abuse. He presented me as someone who was now vindictively trying to destroy 2 innocent people in love and their unborn child out of jealousy and spite. We're requesting immediate temporary support of $8,000 per month, Stockton concluded. $5,000 for Miss Watson and the baby, $3,000 for Mr. Winters as spousal maintenance. We're also requesting exclusive use of the marital home for Mr. Winters and Miss Watson, as Miss Winters can easily afford other accommodations and the expectant mother needs stability. The judge made notes, then looked at my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Watson, I understand you wish to make a statement. My mother stood, her performance beginning. Your Honor, I'm heartbroken to be here. Lacey is our daughter, and we love her, but we can't stand by and watch her destroy innocent lives. She's always been controlling, even as a child. Everything had to be her way. Poor Emma has always lived in her shadow, and when she finally found love, Lacey couldn't handle it. Emma and Mark didn't mean for this to happen, my father added, standing beside his wife. But Lacey had essentially abandoned her marriage. She was never home, always at work or traveling. Mark was lonely, depressed. Emma was just trying to help, to be supportive, and feelings developed. These things happen. What about the pregnancy? The judge asked. A blessing, my mother said, tearing up on cue. Our first grandchild. But Lacey wants to destroy everything out of spite. She's even been spreading horrible lies about Emma, saying she's done this before, that she's some kind of con artist. It's delusional, Your Honor. We're genuinely concerned about Lacey's mental state. They went on to describe instances of my supposed instability, twisting every normal emotion into evidence of mental illness. The time I cried when our dog died became hysterical breakdown over minor incident. My decision to work late on a project became obsessive behavior and inability to maintain work-life balance. Emma took the stand next. The picture of vulnerable motherhood. I never meant to fall in love with Mark, she said, her voice soft and trembling. Lacey had been so cruel to me, always making me feel worthless, like I was a burden. Mark was the only one who was kind to me. He understood what it was like to be belittled by her constantly. She went on to describe fictional instances of my cruelty, each story more elaborate than the last. According to Emma, I had thrown things at her, screamed at her for minor mistakes, and even threatened to have her arrested if she did not leave the house. I'm scared of her, Your Honor, Emma concluded, her hand on her belly. I don't know what she might do to me or my baby. We just want to be safe and have a chance to be a family. Mark's testimony was equally damaging. He painted himself as a broken man who had sacrificed his career to support mine, only to be emotionally and financially abused. She controlled every penny, he said. I had to ask permission to buy a coffee. She made me feel like less than a man, constantly reminding me that she was the breadwinner. Emma was the first person in years to make me feel valued. By the time they were done, even I almost believed their version of events. They were that convincing. I saw some of my cousins crying, completely taken in by the performance. Judge Hendricks looked troubled. This is indeed a complex situation. Miss Bradley, do you have anything to present at this time? Catherine stood slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, we do have evidence to present that will completely change the nature of this case. However, we've just become aware of additional criminal activity that requires immediate attention. We request a brief recess to coordinate with law enforcement who are, as we speak, preparing to act on this information. Objection, Stockton shouted. This is a blatant attempt at drama and delay. Your Honor, Catherine continued calmly, I have FBI Special Agent James Morrison on standby, as well as District Attorney Patricia Harrison from Pitkin County. The crimes we've uncovered in our investigation go far beyond a simple divorce case. We're talking about fraud, extortion, elder abuse, and a conspiracy that involves every single plaintiff in this room. The room erupted. Emma's face went pale. Mark started to stand but thought better of it. My parents looked at each other in confusion and growing alarm. Order! Judge Hendricks banged her gavel. Miss Bradley, these are serious allegations. Indeed they are, Your Honor. And we have documented proof of every single one. Financial records, forged documents, recorded conversations, and multiple witnesses ready to testify. We request a 30-minute recess to allow law enforcement to take their positions. What we're about to reveal will require immediate action. The judge studied Catherine's face, then mine, then looked at the plaintiff's table where Emma was whispering frantically to Mark. Very well. 30-minute recess. But Miss Bradley, this better not be grandstanding. I assure you, Your Honor, what you're about to see will shock everyone in this room. As the judge left, I saw Emma grab her phone and start texting frantically. Mark was on his phone too, his face growing paler by the second. My parents tried to approach me, but Catherine stepped between us. I wouldn't do that if I were you, she said coolly. You might want to consider calling your own attorneys. You're going to need them. What is this about? My father demanded. What have you done, Lacey? Before I could answer, Jason walked over and handed my father a business card. Jason Chen, private investigator. You might want to ask your daughter Emma about Christina Marsh from Austin. Or about Tom Harrison. Or about the 12 elderly men she and Mark have been defrauding online. Or maybe you'd like to discuss the $300,000 you've stolen from Eleanor Williams' trust fund. My mother gasped. My father's face went from red to white in seconds. That's right, I said, finding my voice at last. I know everything. Every lie, every scheme, every crime. And in about 20 minutes, so will everyone else. Emma stood up abruptly, her hand on her belly. I need to use the restroom, she announced. I'll go with you, Mark said quickly. Catherine smiled. Security has been alerted to ensure no one leaves the building, just in case anyone was thinking of running. Emma sank back into her chair, and for the first time since this all began, I saw real fear in her eyes. 30 minutes later, the courtroom was fuller than before. FBI Special Agent James Morrison sat in the front row, his presence causing nervous whispers throughout the room. District Attorney Patricia Harrison from Pitkin County had arrived with 2 assistants, her face set in professional determination. Several security officers now stood at the exits. Judge Hendricks returned, surveying the changed atmosphere with interest. Miss Bradley, you may proceed with your evidence. Catherine stood, clicking a remote that brought up a display on the courtroom screen. Your Honor, what started as a divorce case has uncovered a web of criminal activity spanning multiple states and involving every plaintiff in this room. The first slide showed Emma's mugshot from Austin. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Let's start with Emma Watson, also known as Emma Elizabeth Watson, Emma Torres, and at least 3 other aliases. 3 years ago, in Austin, Texas, Miss Watson was investigated for fraud after convincing a couple to let her move in, seducing the male partner, and then claiming pregnancy to extort $50,000. Catherine clicked to the next slide, showing Christina Marsh's sworn affidavit. Miss Christina Marsh is prepared to testify that Emma Watson admitted the pregnancy was fake, that it was a practiced scheme. Miss Marsh has provided recordings of these admissions. Emma shot up from her chair. That's not true. This is all lies. Sit down, Miss Watson, the judge ordered. You'll have your chance to respond. Catherine continued, showing bank records. Over the past 4 months, Mark Winters and Emma Watson have been operating an online fraud scheme, creating fake profiles to catfish elderly men. The screen showed the 12 profiles, complete with stolen photos and fabricated life stories. They've extracted over $200,000, which they've hidden in cryptocurrency accounts. But the most shocking revelation, Catherine said, clicking to the next slide, concerns the paternity of Miss Watson's baby. The screen showed a prenatal paternity test result. This test, conducted without Mr. Winters' knowledge using DNA from a coffee cup and hair samples, proves definitively that Mark Winters is not the father of Emma Watson's baby. The courtroom exploded. Mark jumped to his feet. What? That's impossible. Emma, tell them. Emma's face had gone white. That test is fake. You faked it. The father, Catherine continued over the chaos, is actually Mr. Tom Harrison, a married millionaire from Aspen, who Miss Watson has been blackmailing for $50,000. The courtroom doors opened, and Patricia Harrison entered with Tom Harrison himself, who looked both furious and humiliated. Mr. Harrison has agreed to testify in exchange for immunity, District Attorney Harrison announced. He will detail how Miss Watson seduced him, secretly recorded their encounter, and then threatened to destroy his political career and marriage unless he paid her. Emma needed someone to claim paternity, Catherine explained, so she seduced Mr. Winters, knowing he desperately wanted children and would never question it. She needed a public father for the baby while she extorted the real father privately. Mark collapsed back into his chair, his head in his hands. Emma, is this true? Emma was trapped, her eyes darting between the exits where security stood. I want a lawyer, she said. Oh, we're not done, Catherine said. She clicked to show financial records. Let's discuss Robert and Margaret Watson's role in this conspiracy. My parents, who had been frozen in shock, suddenly tried to stand. Sit down, Agent Morrison said firmly. Catherine displayed the trust fund records. For 5 years, Robert and Margaret Watson have been systematically stealing from Eleanor Williams' trust fund, of which they are trustees. $300,000 has been withdrawn under false pretenses, supposedly for Emma's various needs that never existed. She showed the forged documents next. They also submitted fraudulent documents to this court, including these supposedly original bank records showing educational loans to their daughter Lacey. Our forensic document examiner confirms these have been digitally altered. The original records, obtained from the bank, clearly show these were gifts. Most disturbing, Catherine continued. They provided a completely fabricated psychological evaluation of Lacey Winters, using the name and forged signature of a retired psychiatrist who has never met her. Dr. Harrison, now living in Florida, has provided an affidavit confirming he never treated Miss Winters and that this is a forgery. My mother was crying now, but they were not the manipulative tears from earlier. These were tears of terror. Your Honor, Catherine said, we have one more witness who would like to make a statement. Mrs. Eleanor Williams. My grandmother stood slowly but steadily, Jason helping her to the witness stand. At 91, she commanded respect, and the courtroom fell silent. My name is Eleanor Williams, she began, her voice clear and strong. Robert Watson is my son, and for the last 5 years I've watched him and his wife steal from me while thinking I was too old and weak to notice. She looked directly at my parents. I started documenting everything 2 years ago when I realized money was disappearing. Every withdrawal, every lie, every forged signature. I have copies of everything in my safety deposit box, which I've provided to Agent Morrison. But what breaks my heart most, she continued, turning to look at me, is how they've treated my granddaughter Lacey. This beautiful, accomplished woman who has done nothing but work hard and try to help her family, they've painted as a villain to cover their own crimes. She then looked at Emma. And you, young lady, you're not just a homewrecker. You're a predator who targets the vulnerable. That baby you're carrying deserves better than to be born into your web of lies. Mrs. Williams, the judge asked gently, why didn't you come forward sooner? I wanted to give my son a chance to come clean on his own. I kept hoping he would do the right thing. But when I learned they were trying to destroy Lacey to cover their crimes, I couldn't stay silent anymore. Catherine took over again. Your Honor, we have criminal complaints ready to file. The FBI will be arresting Emma Watson and Mark Winters for wire fraud and conspiracy. District Attorney Harrison is filing charges for extortion and blackmail. Adult Protective Services is filing charges against Robert and Margaret Watson for elder abuse and financial exploitation. But wait, Catherine said, as sirens became audible outside. There's more. She pulled up a final set of documents. In our investigation, we discovered that Mark Winters didn't lose his job due to downsizing. He was fired for showing up to work intoxicated multiple times. His former employer, afraid of a wrongful termination lawsuit, agreed to keep it quiet if he didn't contest the termination. We have statements from 5 former co-workers confirming this pattern of behavior. Mark's parents, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, stood up and left, his mother crying quietly. Emma suddenly doubled over, clutching her stomach. Something's wrong! The baby! Nice try, Patricia Harrison said dryly. We have medical professionals standing by, but that performance won't delay your arrest. As if on cue, several FBI agents entered the courtroom. Emma Watson, Mark Winters, you're under arrest for wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and identity theft, Agent Morrison announced, as other agents moved toward them. Robert and Margaret Watson, you're under arrest for elder abuse, financial exploitation, and filing false legal documents, another agent announced. The courtroom was chaos. Emma was screaming that she was pregnant and couldn't go to jail. Mark was demanding to know how Emma could do this to him. My parents were begging me to help them, saying families should stick together. Your Honor, Catherine said over the noise, given these revelations, we move for immediate dismissal of all claims against my client, Lacey Winters, with prejudice. Judge Hendricks, who had been watching the arrests with barely concealed shock, nodded. Granted. All claims against Miss Winters are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering an immediate freeze on all assets of the arrested parties pending criminal investigation. As they were being led out, Emma turned to me, her face twisted with rage. This is all your fault. You could never let me have anything. You always had to be the perfect one. No, Emma, I said, my voice steady. You could have had your own life, built your own success. Instead, you chose to take what was mine through lies and manipulation. You made your choices. My parents were walked past me, and my mother reached out. Lacey, please, we're your parents. You stopped being my parents the day you chose to destroy me to cover your crimes, I said. As the courtroom cleared, I stood with Catherine, Jason, and my grandmother. The weight that had been crushing me for months was finally lifting. You did it, sweetheart, my grandmother said, taking my hand. You stood up to them. We all did, I said, squeezing her hand back. Agent Morrison approached us. Miss Winters, we'll need your full cooperation with the investigation. You'll have it, I promised. As we left the courthouse, reporters were already gathering. Catherine shielded us, but I heard the questions flying. Miss Winters, how does it feel to have your entire family arrested? Did you know about the schemes? What will happen to the baby? But I did not answer. This was not about public spectacle. This was about justice, finally served. 6 months later, I stood in my new office, the Denver skyline stretching before me through floor-to-ceiling windows. The promotion to Vice President of Marketing had come through just a week ago, recognition for landing 3 major accounts while managing the chaos of my personal life. My boss had been incredibly supportive throughout the trial, even giving me time off when needed. The afternoon sun painted the mountains golden in the distance, and I took a moment to appreciate the peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. Dinner still on for tonight? I'm cooking. I smiled, typing back a quick, wouldn't miss it. Our relationship had developed slowly, carefully. After years of friendship, neither of us wanted to rush into something just because we were both available. But Jason, had been my rock through everything. And somewhere between the investigation and the trials, friendship had blossomed into something deeper. We were taking it one day at a time, which felt perfect. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. Catherine entered, looking pleased. "Thought you'd want to know the latest," she said, settling into one of my office chairs. "Emma was sentenced this morning. I had chosen not to attend the sentencing hearings, wanting to close that chapter of my life." "How long?" 18 months minimum security for the fraud charges, 3 years probation after. The judge took the pregnancy into account, but the multiple victims and the elaborate nature of the schemes worked against her. Emma had given birth 2 months ago to a baby girl. The irony was not lost on anyone that after faking a pregnancy before, she had finally been caught during a real one. "What about the baby?" "That's the interesting part," Catherine said. "Remember Christina Marsh, the woman Emma scammed in Austin? She and her husband have been trying to adopt for 3 years. They've been approved as foster parents with intent to adopt. The baby will be going to them next week." I sat back, processing this. That's actually perfect. Christina understands what Emma is capable of, so she won't be manipulated by her later. "Tom Harrison and his wife are divorcing," Catherine continued. "But Patricia Harrison says they're working together to ensure Tom pays proper child support into a trust for the baby. Christina and her husband will have full custody, but the child will be financially secure. And Mark? 2 years federal prison for the cyber fraud. He'll be out in 18 months with good behavior. His parents posted bail initially, but they've basically disowned him now. Word is, he's been writing you letters from prison." "I've been returning them unopened," I said. "Good. You don't need that in your life." "What about my parents?" I asked, though part of me wished I did not care. "Your father got 2 years for the elder abuse and fraud. Your mother got 6 months and 5 years probation. They've been ordered to pay full restitution to your grandmother, which means they'll have to sell their house and everything else of value. They had sent me dozens of letters through their lawyers, each one painting themselves as victims of circumstances, of Emma's manipulation, of my lack of family loyalty. I had not read those either. Your grandmother is doing well, by the way," Catherine added. "The assisted living facility says she's become quite the celebrity there. Apparently, she's been teaching a class on financial literacy and how to spot scammers." I laughed, genuinely delighted. That sounds exactly like Grandma Eleanor. She had moved to a nicer facility closer to me, and we had dinner together every Wednesday. At 91, she had more energy than people half her age, and her experience had made her determined to help other seniors avoid similar exploitation. "The extended family?" I asked. Catherine shrugged. "Mixed reactions. Some have apologized for believing the lies. Others still think you should have handled it privately. But that's their problem, not yours." She was right. I had learned that family was not about blood, but about who stood by you when the truth came out. My Aunt Patricia had sent a heartfelt apology letter, admitting she had been completely taken in by my mother's manipulation. A few cousins had reached out, expressing shock at what had been revealed. But many stayed silent, either out of embarrassment or continued judgment. "Oh, one more thing," Catherine said, pulling out an envelope. "The divorce was finalized yesterday. The house is officially yours, free and clear. Mark's name has been removed from the deed." I took the envelope but did not open it. "I'm selling it," I said. "Already have a buyer. I can't live there anymore." "I understand. Fresh start." "The proceeds are going into a trust for Grandma Eleanor's care and a scholarship fund for women who've been victims of financial abuse. I want something good to come from all of this." Catherine smiled. "That's beautiful, Lacey." After she left, I returned to my desk and the work I genuinely loved. My phone buzzed with a reminder. "Therapy appointment tomorrow. Doctor." Sarah Renwick had been helping me process not just the betrayal, but a lifetime of being the family scapegoat. I was learning to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation, and most importantly, to value myself. The trauma of the past year would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had fought back and won, not through revenge, but through truth and justice. The people who had tried to destroy me were facing the consequences of their own actions. As I prepared to leave for dinner with Jason, I noticed a frame on my desk, a new addition from last week. It was a photo from my college graduation, just Grandma Eleanor and me, both beaming with pride. On the back, she had written, "The truth always wins in the end. Love, Grandma." That evening, sitting in Jason's apartment while he cooked his famous pasta arrabbiata, I felt something I had not experienced in years, genuine contentment. We talked about everything and nothing, laughed at his terrible jokes, and planned a hiking trip for the weekend. "Any regrets?" he asked later, as we sat on his balcony watching the city lights. I thought about it carefully. I regret that it took me so long to see who they really were. I regret the years I spent trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. But the ending? No regrets there. "They made their choices," Jason said, taking my hand. "Yes, they did. And now I'm making mine." I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people who should protect you become your greatest threat. My parents' favoritism toward Emma had not helped her. It had created a person who believed consequences did not apply to her. Their enabling was not love, but weakness, disguised as compassion. Real love, I had discovered, looked like my grandmother standing up in court to tell the truth. It looked like Jason spending countless hours investigating to help me. It looked like Catherine fighting fiercely for justice. It looked like choosing truth over toxic loyalty, even when it meant standing alone. 6 months ago, I had stood in a courtroom watching my world collapse. Today, I stood in my new life, one built on truth rather than lies, on genuine relationships rather than manipulation, on self-respect rather than endless sacrifice for people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. But from those ashes, I had built something new and beautiful, a life where I was valued, respected, and genuinely loved. The text from Grandma Eleanor came right on schedule, our nightly check-in. "Sweet dreams, my brave girl. See you Wednesday for dinner. I'm making your favorite pot roast." I smiled, texting back, "Can't wait, Grandma. Love you." And I meant it. This was love. This was family. This was worth everything I had gone through to find it. Looking out at the city lights below, I thought about everyone watching this story unfold. How many of you have dealt with family members who took advantage of your kindness? Who made you feel guilty for having boundaries? Who expected you to sacrifice everything while giving nothing in return? If you're watching this and seeing your own story reflected in mine, I want you to know you deserve better. Your success is not something to apologize for. Your boundaries are not selfish. And sometimes, the greatest act of self-love is walking away from people who only see you as a means to an end. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who crossed the line? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Please share your stories, like this video if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more content about overcoming adversity and finding your truth. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their struggle. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you are stronger than you know, and you deserve a life filled with genuine love and respect. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never be afraid to stand up for yourself. Your truth matters, and so do you.